Sam Raghu. How's it going, my friend?
All good, David. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. Thanks for taking the time today, buddy.
No, I appreciate it. It's awesome just to talk to you in the first place, and I'm thrilled and tickled that you are doing this podcast.
Well, thanks, man. Well, look, by the way, right before we started this recording, I was saying, dude, you're looking good. All spick
Yes,
and span on a Sunday morning. Look at you.
on a Sunday morning, yes, I found time to shave. No,
Or
absolutely.
not.
Oh no, I did shave. I actually shaved today, but this part is not shaved, obviously. Uh, but yes,
All right.
no, it's great. Thanks.
All right. Well, you're looking distinguished, my friend. Um, okay. Well, hey, why don't you take a few seconds to introduce yourself to everyone here?
Okay, I'm Swaminathan Raghu, go by Sam Raghu, and I'm a regional vice president at Salesforce. And what else can I say? From an introduction perspective, just my family and I are here in Toronto, Canada, or actually Mississauga, Canada. My wife, two kids, twins, and our little puppy who's 3 years old. Yeah, that's just me in terms of a brief introduction.
All right. Well, I think you're being very modest, Sam. Let's talk. Just talk about some of your accomplishments as a leader. You've been a sales professional for many years, for as long as I've known you. One of the best I've seen. But maybe stop being humble. All right. I know that's one of your leadership qualities. Uh, just brag a little bit about your accomplishments.
Ah, geez, that does make me uncomfortable because you are right.
This is perfect.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of other people, there have been some very successful moments in my life, and I'm grateful that I've had those. A lot of them have been, as a sales professional, just making my number over and over again, and getting the kudos and accolades related to that. But there are certain things that have come along, I would say, that are not necessarily just, you hitting your target, you hitting your attainment numbers. I think self-actualization and satisfaction can be achieved through multiple means. And I know we'll go into that a little bit deeper, but some of that, I would say when you say accomplishment to me, some of that accomplishment is not merely the numbers and what I've done as a sales professional, but it's about being a leader, being a person that people can rely on and trust and be a friend with. And those accomplishments are near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, Sam, and that's one of the things I appreciate about you, and that's why you came to mind when I started this podcast on leadership. It's not just about the outcomes, but it's how you achieve those outcomes, which is what I want to dig into today with everyone here. But hey, if you're going to be humble, I'm going to be non-humble for you for Sam for a second. Sam's been a top when he was a sales rep. He was one of the top sales reps many years in a row. Has been to sales club in Hawaii many times as I can remember. And in fact, I think Sam, there was one year you actually achieved such great results that you actually won a trip to Bhutan. Was that the happiest place on earth?
Yeah. I think it was 2016 or 2017, and we had closed a large deal at HubSpot. In fact, it was the largest deal in what was called our mid-market segment at that point in time, and that earned me as an incentive trip with our worldwide president, then Frank Van Veenendaal, to Bhutan. So it was an amazing trip. Because one, just being there with others and people that across the organization that have accomplished a lot, learning from them. But two, the going to Bhutan and just understanding how their philosophy of life was just an amazing thing.
Yes, I remember you talking about that trip, and I do want to come back to the self actualization a little bit later with
Mhm.
you because I think this lends well to it. But I do want to dig into some of like how I saw you professionally over the years and I think, geez, I've known you for over a decade, if not longer. You were one of the first sales reps I had the privilege of working with, and we actually took the same train together, which was the
Yes.
odd thing, which actually helped build our relationship. And that was one of the things with you was you were great at building relationships, and in fact, I would argue that you were somewhat of a chameleon. And if I could just share with everyone out here, one of the things Sam was amazing at, he wasn't just a chameleon. He didn't just have the EQ. He would literally change the dialect that he was speaking on the fly with someone, right? So that he can relate back to them. And so, Sam, I don't know if you know exactly what I'm talking about. You
I know
might,
what you're
right? So,
talking about.
but but just talk about that, like how that skill that you had of being a chameleon, but bringing people together. It was very natural for you. How did that help you in being an individual contributor as well as a leader?
Yeah, I'll get to the chameleon piece in a bit. For me, I think bringing people together was pretty much a natural thing, and I think it's something that evolved from childhood. And I grew up in an environment where we were, a close knit family group and close knit friends group. But we always made sure that we brought everyone along, right? And we listened to their views, and just like every family or close friends, we had our squabbles too. But I think just living in that environment and growing up in an environment where you learn to bring people along with you was a important part of what shaped me. And so when I think about my professional career, it's not something that I made I would say an extra effort about, but I knew that here's all the people that are involved in this, for example, deal or opportunity, and I want to get to know them better. I just want to know what makes them tick. I want to know why they want this to be a successful deal, something that they want to make sure it closes. And just understanding each person's motivations is important. And that's where the relationship building goes. If you remember, even in the office, I'll say, hey, let's go have a tea, right? And three or four of us will just go
Coffee,
out and
please.
through your coffee or, and we just and sorry for the language there, but just really just figure things out and be friends, right? And when you could do that, then working with each other becomes easier, right? Because then you're not working with a colleague, you're working with a friend, right? And you can push back,
Mm-hmm.
and if you've got your views, you're comfortable speaking your views. And it's really really important that everybody does, because not the account executives or their leaders aren't always the right they don't have the right viewpoint or the right solution. So I think that's just part of it. It's just making sure that everyone comes along, everyone feels welcome, everyone can talk, everyone has feels like this is something that I'm a part of. And that's what just helps me is just building those relationships. So it's a natural thing for me, and I think it's been very, very successful throughout my years. In terms of being a chameleon, quite honestly, I don't know if that's something that I would boast about, because, and it's not something that I do consciously. It's something that happens very subconsciously, and I know that it's very subconscious because many times my wife, even when we're traveling, we'd meet some strangers, and they'd, like, for example, they'd be talking in an absolute British accent, and after 10 minutes of talking with them, I would just be, kind of articulating things back in a British accent. And I don't know why it happens, but it happens. And if you ask me now to put on the British accent, I can't. It's weird because I just can't do it. But if I'm in the presence of sort of, someone who is British, after 10 minutes, I'm talking and using the same kind of pronunciations and so on. So I don't know if it broke down barriers or not, and it was not conscious, but it does help. I think that people feel a little bit more comfortable when they hear their
No, absolutely. And I think it's all your years as a secret spy, 007, right? So But we'll talk about that career path another time, right? So actually,
Absolutely.
Sam was not a 007 spy, just for the record. Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
KGB.
but it, yeah, and that's, and very sincerely, that's one of the things I appreciate about you, especially like in, sales is it could be a very cutthroat environment, right? Depending on, where you are. But, I've worked with a lot of sales reps like yourself over the years, and you're the ones who stand out, who actually, look for the human in every individual. It sounds so obvious. It sounds so obvious as leadership, and looking for the human is not just, you didn't just, even when you were a leader, you didn't just, compartmentalize that to your team, right? You actually looked beyond everyone else in the ecosystem, and that's hard. That's hard for a lot of people. I struggle with it sometimes myself, I will admit it, because you're trying to hit outcomes, you're trying to hit goals, and sometimes when you're so goal oriented, you forget about that journey and the people that come along the way that are going to help you get there, right? And that's one of the things that, when I think about you, you're excellent at, right? And so Sam, thanks for sharing that. I guess like when you think about now, just your ability to relate and such, talk about like how did you know you were ready for leadership? And I want to caveat, like I remember like at one point where both of us were considering leadership at one point, we were kind of talking about it with each other, like, I don't know, I'm still have certain doubts or whatever those doubts might be. And no, at some point you made that transition to say, okay, I'm ready for leadership. What helped you go from an individual contributor to say, I'm going into leadership now?
Yeah, I think that's kind of where, if you think about Maslow's triangle of self-actualization, that's kind of where it comes in, right? It's like I felt like I was at a point where a lot of the basic needs were met, um, and I say that because I came to Canada in 2004 as an immigrant, and with my wife, and we had literally $10,000 in 4 suitcases. That's it of things. And I know there's a lot of people that come with way less. So think about what they go through. But coming with that, it was really imperative that we made a life for ourselves, and so a lot of the initial years that I was putting into being a sales account executive and being successful at it really boiled down to I got to be successful in order to make this kind of money and in order to live this kind of lifestyle. And that's what fueled me. It fueled me for quite a long time. But then once you get to that and you start to enjoy and experience that lifestyle, then it's about what's next, right? So that's kind of what I got to, was like, okay, with God's grace, I've got what I wanted to have. And I feel like there's a lot more I can give back. And, I coach people, I mentor people, I'm, giving advice on deals. I'm doing all of these things on the side. Why not do that officially as a leader? And because I enjoy doing that, so why not do that as an official leader, with a role? And that's what really got me into leadership. It was about the giving back. It's about helping others to succeed, helping others to achieve what they want to achieve. And it gave me happiness. It still does. If you ask me what drives me as a leader, just helping others succeed drives me as a leader. And that selflessness was an important, critical decision factor where I said, am I selfless enough to be a leader now? And at the point that I felt I was, is when I said, let me become a leader.
Well, excellent. Yeah, in one of the first podcasts I did with Dave Tuners, episode 001, folks, we talked about, I talked about how I went to his retirement party years ago, and so many people flew in on their own dime just to be with him, to say, happy retirement. And it was at that point when I personally realized that's what it is to be a leader. No one cared what his title is, was, has been. It was all about, he helped me do this. He helped me get better. He helped me get to where I am today. And that's when I realized that is exactly what I want too. Right. And
Yeah.
that's when I think I would argue that's when you know you're ready for leadership. If you're in it for the money, in it for the accolades, it's a terrible
Yeah.
incentive.
Yeah.
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 So
Another example of that,
yeah.
real quickly, was Doug Perry. I think you know him as well. There was one year, out of the 7 people on his team, 6 people he either got promoted or they moved to different parts of the organization, and he helped them do that. So essentially, his team was decimated. But as a leader, he stood out. Every
Mm-hmm.
single person respected him and still does.
Yep.
That's the selflessness.
Yeah. Yeah. And those are truly what leaders actually are, right?
Yeah.
And self-actualization, you mentioned this a few times already in our short time here. Talk more about that. Like what role has it seems like it's playing a bigger role for you right now.
It is. It's and it's not something that you wake up one day and you decide what is it that makes you feel like you've achieved self-actualization. I think it's an ongoing process where we're learning, and as we learn, things change for us as well, right? So recently, like for example, part of my self-actualization from a career perspective was, yes, I wanted to become a leader. That's great. I wanted to be selfless, absolutely. Um, but now it's about, that's great. I've done that, but here are other things that I'd want to do. I know I can, and I know I can help these organizations grow if I can bring those skills to bear in the right organization. Now that's part of, I would say, the evolution of my self-actualization. The other part of the evolution of my self-actualization is that I put a little bit of my health and well-being on the back burner for a while, and now I brought that to the forefront. And so I've been spending some time on that. So that's another part of it. I think it's really about what, at any point in time, as you go through time, you're thinking about what makes you a better person, a stronger person, a healthier person, and a happier person, and how you can contribute by being all of that. Can I be a better father because I'm healthier and I'm happier? Can I be a better leader because I'm selfless and I'm I can give back. It's that thing that keeps evolving over time, and I think there's more that will come later. But at this point, I'm really focusing on my health, and the other part is what can I give back beyond what I already have as a leader.
You mentioned health, and early, right before we recorded, I asked you, what is there anything you've changed your mind on recently or doubled down on? And you mentioned it's your health. What? Uh, Talk more about that.
Yeah, I think, as you said, and a lot of professions are quite relentless. Most professions are. So I'm not going to carve out a special place for salespeople. But sales is very stressful. And sales is something that consumes a ton of your time. And it also consumes a ton of your mental time, even outside of when you are not in working hours, because you're always thinking through the process, you're thinking through the deal, you're thinking through the relationships, you're thinking through about what needs to be done, what could go wrong, how can I get ahead of that, what's the competition, what are the things. So it's a subconscious thing that's always in your head, and it definitely has a toll on you. And over the last 16 years, as I told you, as I came in as an immigrant, I really just dove into work. For me, it was all about making sure that I was successful. And diving into work, I neglected a lot of things. Salesforce was an amazing company with amazing benefits, which I never took advantage of. Recently, though, things have changed. And I've said, you know what? I need to really focus on leveraging some of those benefits, but more importantly, getting back to the things that I really, really enjoy. So I had played badminton for a little while. I mean, as a young kid, I played badminton quite a bit. And then when I came to Canada for about 6 months or so, someone introduced me to badminton. I tried it, I played it, but then I got back into work. And of course, the kids happened, twins. So consumed all of my time. So now I'm back into badminton and I love it. It's been 14 years since I played badminton, and I play 3 times a week, 2 hours each. And it's one of the most exhilarating sports that, that I love. And I want to go every time I can and play, because it just takes my mind off of everything around me. And I feel the difference when I do that, right? And that's part of the health. I road bike. So I do about 75 kilometers to 100 kilometers every week. And I walk otherwise, and slowly in the summers I also swim. So it's really important that I do that, because I can feel like the more and more I immerse myself into physical activity, it gives me the space for all the subconscious things to dissipate, right? We were talking about all the subconscious things that happen in a salesperson's mind. Now that's gone. For those 2 hours, for that hour that I'm riding my bike, or for that 45 minutes that I'm swimming or whatever, it's gone, and I'm getting the physical exercise that I needed, right? So reinforcing my body. And the benefits of that are just humongous. It's just taken me a long time to recognize and realize that, which I will, for anyone that is going to listen to this, please don't ignore that, right? And the other part is, if you have benefits, use them. Acupuncture. I just discovered acupuncture, and I can't believe it. It's freaking amazing. It's done wonders to my body, more than a massage or anything else. And so, these are the things that I say. Health has become a big part now. I don't think that that's going to go away. All right. And so when we talk about that self-actualization journey, these are the things. You learn new things about yourself. You want to make sure that you follow through on that. And then you make sure that you incorporate that into your schedule and your daily life.
Yeah. Yeah. And, what I appreciate about the story, Sam, is that it's a never ending process, right? Where you just keep learning about yourself, you keep growing, and you've realized what you've done done about your health in the last decade plus, and you're doing something about it right now. It's never too late, right? I guess on that theme of learning, when you think about some of the things where you failed at as a leader, what comes up, and what did you learn from that?
Very good question. And I think failure is definitely a stepping stone to success. And I'll tell you, any leader who says that they haven't failed at stuff is just absolutely lying. Because we all learn through failure. For me, some of the things that I've learned through, one, I would say, was earlier on in my career, very early in my career, I had the privilege of joining a startup. This was in India, and I was the first sales executive that they hired. And within 2.5 years, I grew that organization to about 76 people, and had a lot of assistant managers under me, and it was a fantastic time. But let's remember, I was young, and when you're young, your drive to succeed sometimes gets the better of who you are as a person. And I don't know if I'm, quite honestly, made all the right decisions by all the people that reported to me, right? And when I think back, I was like, maybe I could have handled those situations differently, right? I could have been more human to those people. And you learn from that, right? So that's the reason why. That was another reason why, when I went into leadership the second time over here at Salesforce, it took me a long time to get back into it, was because I wanted to make sure I'm going to be the right person for the people that I serve, right? So that's definitely one. The second thing was just hiring the right people. It's such a critical part of of what you do to the rest of the team and the rest of the organization. Hiring the right person and the right I would say culture fit, even though sometimes we don't hear nowadays culture itself is a wrong terminology. But I'm going to stay a little old school and use the word culture, because when you've got a functioning team, there are certain things the team does together, and there's a certain way the team functions together. You got to make sure that whoever comes in is able to cope and adapt, and be a part of that, right? And bring in practices along with that. Like if they bring in great practices, the team is for the better. But hiring that right person is important. And so when you ask me what mistakes I've made mistakes of hiring the wrong person. And it has cost the team dearly, more than it has cost me. And it's important to recognize that and to make sure that, you don't, I can't say, will I ever not make the wrong hire? Probably not. You never know, right? Sometimes people put on a facade, or they're the avatar of who they really are. But you've got to make a sincere effort in every way possible. So I changed the way that we were hiring. We changed the methodology. We changed the way that people would present themselves. I made sure that if I was hiring somebody, three of my team members or four of my team members would talk to them too, because I wanted to make sure that they had that experience of speaking to this new member who might come on, the ability to give me some feedback and learn from that. So I made that much more of a consensus-based process than an individual hiring process. So yeah, we learn from mistakes. I've made a ton of them. I will make mistakes as a leader, but it's important to learn.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Sam. It's hiring has been one of the biggest shared mistakes that all the managers I've talked to, and on this podcast as well, has said they've made. But the key thing is what I'm trying to get out at everyone, like yourself, is what did you do about it? How did you change your process? How did you change what you look for, and who is involved, and all that, right? Like you're going to make mistakes no matter what. Like you said, like you could have the best process in the world. Unofficial. I think 1 out of every 10 hires is going to be the wrong hire for you, right? Some people put on a good facade. Some folks, their life circumstances change, and they become not the right person for the job anymore, right? But whatever the case, performance is always a ongoing issue for a leader. So thanks for sharing that, Sam.
Of course,
I guess when you think about now, the things you've learned, the mistakes you've made, and what you did about it, can you talk about like mentors you've had? Like, are there any mentors in your career as a leader that really stick out, and what did they teach you?
Yeah, I think that, let me liken it to this. I'll name a few mentors for sure, but I'll also draw a parallel. So just like a child or a toddler learns words and then learns to string those words together and make sentences, I think as a leader, when we think about mentors, I would say that we learn concepts from everyone that we encounter. So all the leaders that you encounter have some concepts. They may or may not be officially your mentors that have given you advice and you can turn to at all times. But I would say that what you learn from them is absolutely valuable, because then you say, these are the concepts I want to use as a leader, right? But there are also things that you might say, that I don't want to ever repeat that. If I'm going to become a leader, I should never repeat that with my people, right? So I think mentorship is something that I would define as much more broad in terms of the people that I've learned from. If you want me to call out a couple of people, I would say one of my first managers, and I'm a gentleman named Brandon Huff out of California. He was at that startup that I had mentioned, which we grew like crazy. He taught me a lot. He just taught me a lot about, just economy, world cultures, selling to the United States, coaching people, hiring. And he was such a great business partner as we went through that entire thing. And he gave me the latitude. I was working with the product team. even back then. I was working with the marketing team on what are the things that we need to put up on the website and so on and so forth. So there was a lot of, I would say, room he gave me to grow personally. So the mentorship from Brandon Huff was just fantastic. And then, post that, I would say that at Oracle, I met a gentleman named Puneet. He was amazing. He taught me a lot about, just rigor and cadence and relentlessness.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it was so funny because sometimes, you'd make a call and then you'd like, okay, I'm going to document some of the notes. And if he was passing by, he's like, Sam, what's happened? Do you need a feather duster? Do you want to dust off that phone and make some calls? But he was doing that in a very jovial way. But a lot of the ethics that you need to be a successful account executive, you learn from mentors like him. Nadeem Ahmed, whom you know, is a great friend of mine and a fantastic mentor. I turn to him even today for advice. And he'd always he had this style where he'd be like, all right, baby, let's talk. I think you remember his baby terminology. Let's go, baby, let's have a chat. And then we'd walk around the aisles and then whatever it is, and we dissect the deal, we dissect the opportunity, we dissect the account, the relationships. And it really, really helped because, like, sometimes if you're going to for example, take a 50-year-old car and you're like, okay, hey, I'm going to rebuild this car. What do? You got to take it apart to rebuild it, right? Because you never know where the rust is. You don't know what the disc brakes are. Are they good? Are they not? Are they shot? So that way, I think Nadeem really taught me about how to look at everything from multiple angles, and leveraging the team that surrounds us, which he was very good at. So I would say Nadeem was definitely a mentor that I learned from as well.
Well, thank you. Well, it sounds like these folks have had a lot of influence on you and who you are today, right? I guess if you were to take those lessons and the lessons you've learned, right, what would you advise all the listeners today, especially the folks who want to be leaders, those who are leaders today? What advice would you give to them right now?
Maybe a few concepts. I would say first, be selfless. You got to be absolutely selfless. Be empathetic. Be there for the people. That's important. Have a beginner's mindset. You got to be wanting to learn. Learning is a continuous process, and you've just got to be willing and able to learn. Coach people, right? And be a teacher, right? And I'm going to use coach and teacher in a different way because I think there are coaching moments. And so you give people certain advice and you say, okay, this is great. Let's try and follow this and so on. I think being a teacher is when you have absorbed certain concepts, you have learned something, and then you are able to impart that. And I'll give you an example, new technology that comes out. Be the first to dive in, learn it wholeheartedly, so that when you are telling your team, go out and sell it, guess what? You know enough so that when the team's asking questions, you are now educating them. So be the teacher, which means that you need to be educated, which is where the beginner's mindset comes from. Be a doer, right? Get in the trenches. Your team's going to need you. And I don't, quite honestly, I don't care whether you are an RVP, AVP, or what it is. It's really important that you help your team to succeed. And getting in the trenches is I think important for you. Be a defender. And when I say defender, I mean, you've got to stand up for the rights of your people. There's going to be pressures that are going to come from different parts of the organizations at all time. But as long as you know your people are doing the right things, you got to defend them and you got to stand up for them. Keep the pressure away from them, right? And so absorbing all of that and making sure that it doesn't impact the team is huge. Have fun. For me, I think one of the biggest things was, just having fun with people, right? And we just talk about family, about fun things, what's on Netflix, and, go out and have a few beers, just do whatever it is that your team can loosen up and just have fun. Because once you are getting out of the role of either being, the person that's you're reporting to, or you are the person, that's the sales rep. Once you get out of that role, you are now being humans to each other, and you're relating to one another, and fun brings that out. So if you can just go out and find an environment where you can talk about each other and their interests, I think that's really important. Team person, this, David, I learned this from you. Like, you were always there for us. You always been there for everyone. I know people that have reported to you that have said David's an amazing leader. He takes care of the team, but he brings people along as well from multiple parts of the organization. So when I say team player, it's like reach into the organization deep and bring them along so that you can enable success all through. Kudos to you, David. I just want to make sure that I called that out. I was speaking with Gulnaz 6 months ago, and just heard amazing things, which no doubt, I've always had a great opinion of you, my friend.
Well, it took you 15 years to figure that out, but thank you very much for sharing that.
No, of course. Yeah. 15 long years.
Well,
and some train rides.
Some train rides.
And some train rides.
So I want to transition now, just talking about your some of the more personal things to you. What's one thing that you can think of that has really tested your grit and resilience?
Man, that's a hard question. And I'll say that because maybe the way I think about grit is very different than what grit is made out to be. Whenever most of us hear the word grit, we think about big endeavors, right? Like if you watch 14 Peaks on Netflix, there's this.
Oh yeah,
have you watched it?
That's great. That is an excellent movie.
It's excellent, right? And it just shows you what grit is. But we always think about grit as something huge, monumental, right? I would argue that grit is in all of us in our everyday lives, right? Think about all those construction workers that turn up to work every day, the utility workers that turn up to work every day and have to carry weights and move things and all that. And they wake up with aches and pains every day. And yet they go to work and they get the work done. Think about all those children that have had a hard upbringing and they find a way to be successful and be good citizens. Think about all the nurses that don't get respected at work, don't get paid enough, work long hours, and yet they go to work every single day and make it happen. I think grit is, to me, in every single one of us. And it's what drives us. It's what drives us all. Behind that grit, there's purpose. There's a reason why we have all of that grit, but grit's in all of us. And we just need to recognize it. And I just want to, the way I think about grit is it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be monumental. It can be grit behind everyday activities that drive you towards achieving your purpose, right? That's the way I look at grit. So if we break it down that way, I think for me, grit was just being able to succeed in North America, was being able to establish who I was, and being able to show myself more than anybody else that I can do this. That was super important for me. Grit was, as a child, I moved, my parents moved from Africa to India, and we did that because we were bankrupt. And so my dad, talk about grit, my dad had to start his career all over again in India. That's grit. But for me at that time, I had to cope with, not knowing the language, and just really coping with an absolute cultural shift, moving from Africa to India, and coping with that. And so it's a small example of grit. It's not monumental in any way. So I think there's pieces of grit everywhere throughout everyone's lives that really keep us moving. But behind that grit is always purpose.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that. I think one of the in the one of the stories that resonate with me is, my parents were immigrants to Canada as well. And me and my siblings, we're the privileged generation, I guess you can call it, because we were born here. Not by no means with a silver spoon in our mouth. We had to work to get to where we are, right? I had to work to where I am now too. But you look at it like my parents, like yourself, like came with virtually nothing, didn't speak a lick of English, right? When they came here over 50 years ago. And, and back then, Toronto was not the multicultural melting pot it is now. So,
Yeah.
to say there wasn't racism, we'd be lying, right? That there wasn't, right? But that's what propelled them forward, and to where they are now and where we are now. And so when I hear your story, Sam, it's there's a lot of relatability, right? It's that daily grind. It's not one peak after another. It's these bumps all along the way that eventually, for a normal person, they'll just say, you know what, I give up. I had enough, right? It's not the one mountain, it's the constant jostling and ups and downs that could knock people down. And your story there, I'm sure if we had more time, we would go into it, but it's the constant ups and downs that can knock you down very easily if you're not focused on that purpose. So I respect what you've been through.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us, like, I'll just, because you and I both worked at Salesforce, think about the month-on-month rigor, the quarter-on-quarter rigor, the year-on-year rigor. It was relentless. That's grit. Getting through that, that's grit.
Yeah, and keeping your head up while you're at it, right? So I do want to start wrapping up here and ask you a couple of fun questions now.
Okay.
Advice to the 20-year-old Sam. What would you say to him?
Oh God, 20-year-old Sam was an idiot, man. I, I don't think that if I could turn back time and if I were 20 again, I'd probably make the same mistakes or go down the same path that I've been down, because I just, I was just having fun back then. The advice I'd probably give 20-year-old Sam is think about your career and think about not just what you are achieving along your career, but what you are going to be learning along your career. And I say that because I spent 16 years at Salesforce. And while that was a fantastic time, and I've worked different markets and, different segments and different industries and leadership and so on, I also feel like there's a part of me that says, hey, maybe if I had done multiple organizations instead of 16 years at Salesforce, what could have been, right? My network might have been 4 or 5 times better. My knowledge of technologies could have been way better. There's a lot of learning opportunities in change, right? So while I stick to Salesforce like an old-time GE guy, it was great, and it helped me achieve what I have today and what I am today. I also look back and I say, maybe I think there's also benefit to looking at what you get from change and the need to embrace change. So that would probably be the advice I'd give the 20-year-old Sam, is just look out for change, look out for the right opportunities, embrace it.
Embrace change.
Embrace change.
Embrace change. All right. So speaking of change, I noticed on LinkedIn, which we'll put in the show notes later, all your contact details and what you got going on, Sam. I noticed you've started a blog. Is that right?
I don't know if it's a blog, but LinkedIn allows you to write articles, and I started writing some articles just recently over the last 3 months actually, and it's been good. It's cathartic in a certain way, and for me, it just allows me to put some thoughts together. And I've heard feedback from quite a few people that what you take for granted, and you might think it's simple, Sam, and it's guaranteed that these are concepts that are foreign and new to the younger folks, or to people in different industries or whatever. So I've heard from folks that they want me to keep writing, and they want me to keep publishing. So it's just been a good experience, I would say, to feel that it's something that is useful to others. And yeah, I don't know. I might probably I'm going to continue doing that. I don't know the frequency of that, but I probably continue doing that.
Well, I can say, like, I've read those articles. They're excellent, very well thought out. Right? It's you could tell it's very personal. These are your experiences coming out, right? From things you talk about relationship, but also like the rigor you put into things, how to say no. It just I can't remember all the articles. The first one I remember that was like excellent, right? When I first read it, I was like, that's the Sam the teacher right there, right? So I would encourage you to keep doing it, Sam, if you want. In fact, we might even have a segment here on this podcast where we get to critique leadership ongoings that are going on in the world right now, and I can have you as a special guest for that if you like. So we could do something like that. We can have some fun with this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, some of those stories, dude, you were an integral part of those, right? So one of those that was on value, if you remember, that was that medical device company back in Boston that you were an absolute integral part of for winning, right? And we learned a lot during that process. So
I remember the mind maps, the branches of the mind maps that we had to boil down to like 3 points, which was probably harder than anything else. But wow, what a way of learning on the job, right?
That was just fantastic. I mean, we sold FSL before FSL even existed.
That was fun. Yeah. Yes. Lots of things, and those are the things that I, do my best to impart on others to this day. So Sam, what else would you like to tell everybody? What do you got going on? What do you want to share with the rest of the world right now?
What do I have going on? Well, I'm on to looking for my next adventure, and I'm being specific about it. I want to make sure that whatever I get into allows me to grow as an individual, and the organization that I get into leverages the skills that I have. So that's what I'm on to. If anyone knows of exciting leadership opportunities that are related to go to market, I'm happy to hear you out.
Well, I would tell anyone listening to this part of the podcast, if you made it this far, hopefully you have, because you have. Get Sam while you can. He's probably he is one of the best executives I've worked with in my career, and that's why he's on this podcast. So snatch him up before someone else does. All right, folks. All right, Sam. Well, we'll have everything in the show notes, folks. Thank you very much for taking the time today to listen to this, Sam. Always a pleasure, my friend.
My pleasure, David. Thank you so much. And I'm just, again, tickled that you're doing this. This is just fantastic. Thank you, buddy.
This is fun. This is fun for me. Actually, before I go there, I just remember I'm supposed to ask you a question to ask me. That's how I'm deciding to end these podcasts. So I almost prematurely ended this. What question do you have for me?
The question I have for you is why? You're doing these podcasts, which is fantastic. I love it, and I love David Tunders was on, Abbas was on, and these are all great minds. So why are you doing this, and what do you get out of this?
Yeah, well, I can tell you, I can work backwards, right? Simon Sinek talks about get to the why first, and then work out. I'm going to work from the outside in, right? Like, what's this give me? What's this giving me? You talk about like, this is cathartic. It feels good. It feels good because I know I've built a network of people around me like yourself over, I don't know, my career's spanned over 20 years now. It's crazy to even say that, right? Like 20 plus years. I don't want to say what the plus is. I know a lot of people, and I don't think I've actually sat down with any of them in this format, this long form format, to pick their brain and understand. So how do you think about things, Sam? Like, we talk about a lot. We went to tea and coffee, but we never actually talked in depth about this. So it's giving me a lot. And what I'm telling folks is, when I say I'm I'm always the why. I'm a lifelong learner, and I don't say that in a facetious way. I really love learning, and I've been struggling recently. Like, what else am I learning, and what else am I trying to perfect? And this is another way for me to learn. I talk to folks like yourself, right? Like the self-actualization. I remember learning about Maslow's hierarchy of needs like 15 years ago. I've let go of that. Because of that, I'm going to go back to it. This is giving me that energy I need to learn something new every day, right? That's why I'm doing that. I have a day job. I love my day job. I'm a leader right now, right? This is going to help me become a better leader, right? And that's why I'm doing it. So, and you see the energy in my eyes. You can't fake passion.
Yeah.
This is fun, right? And it's not because of money. There's no big money behind this. There's no sponsors knocking on my door, right? This is something I'm just doing for fun, and that's why I do it, and it feels right. So.
I love it, dude. I love all the reasons why you're doing it, and I know you do it out of the goodness of your heart. And I love that you're learning. I mean, that beginner's mindset we should always have it, irrespective of time, right? And learning from each other is super, super important. Like learning, and we can learn from anyone and everyone. Like look for the smallest thing that you say that changed a perspective of mine. That's a learning moment. It doesn't matter where that comes from. That can come from a child interacting with another child at the park, and you can say, damn it, I'm going to learn from that. And that's, I think that's where it took me a long time to really build up that learner's mindset and really learn from things. And I'm not an expert at it, but I keep reminding myself to learn all the time. So I love what you're doing. I really, really love what you're doing.
Yeah. And this is what makes this fun, and what makes life fun as well. Right. So, All right. So no false end this time. This is, this is the wrap up. So Sam, thank you again, sir.
Thank you.
This is great.
Take care, everybody.